such a heartfelt place. Just walking in and feel the transcendental environment, deep relationships, and I have a deep gratitude for Srila Radhanath Swami. It's wherever he goes, he creates such an environment. Grateful to him, and grateful to all of you for holding this space so that people can come from anywhere in the world and have a transcendental experience. I do meet people regularly who have been to the Bhakti Center and who feel uplifted because of their experience here. So the painstaking work you're doing by keeping this space transcendently pristine and offering the programming that you do for people of various levels of interest is well worth it. Thank you very much for all you do. Hare Krishna. Come on, give yourself a big hand. It's always appropriate, or helpful anyway, to start with the song, because mostly in this world we respond to sound vibration, and everyone keeps a song in his or her heart. It's what drives us. Have you ever noticed how musicians are revered and people would like to go in the thousands, tens of thousands, and even millions to hear a musician sing? And sometimes we feel that they're speaking to us and that we're moved by them. Typically poets, musicians for millennia have been thought leaders in society, and not necessarily because they're so thoughtful, although many are, but it's because music penetrates the heart, resonates with what's already inside us. In fact, when we're joyful, we like to dance, and usually it's accompanied by song. If anybody's watched a Bollywood movie, you know that song can break out at any time. When I was a kid, I didn't appreciate it so much, except I did like Julie Andrews in Sound of Music. That was pretty good. But actually, I liked it a lot. But now I really appreciate it, because in the spiritual realm, any spiritual realm, even when we feel uplifted, we feel like singing. And as a matter of fact, if we don't feel like it and we do sing, then oftentimes we rise to the occasion. Have you ever found that?
Yes.
Sometimes when we're wondering, hey Vasudev, Hare Krishna. He's my dear friend. Sometimes when I'm walking through a city and I hear the sound of kirtan in the city, I notice that it penetrates the pall that's normally there, the din of traffic, the cacophony of voices, such as they are, and whatever other noises are there, mostly noises of expediency where people are engaged in commerce and trying to move people in a certain direction to buy something. And when you do hear the sound of what we call Sankirtan, it's singing specifically to glorify the Supreme. That sound vibration is a relief. There's a feeling of relief. The process of Sankirtan was brought by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said that every day is a good opportunity to sing and dance. Be a good title for a book. Never miss a chance to dance. And the soul is always active. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nahi kashit shanamapi jatu tishteti karma krit karyate havashat karma sarva prakriti jayagunai. That is, we're active always, even when we sleep. We're trying to go somewhere, find something, catch a plane. That's usually what I dream about. And when we're awake, we hope for a time when we can be with friends, hope for a time when we can have a loving exchange somewhere. And much of that is accommodated by coming together for music. Interesting about music also, raga means musical scales that evoke a certain mood. And according to the ancient Shastras, which teach about Bhakti, in the spiritual world, every devotee has his or her own raga, unique raga. And then it goes on to say that even in this world, every species has its own raga. So we are resonant with the sound of music. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended that if you sing, and you also introduce the transcendental names of God, and that's a science in and of itself, that when you sing names of God, that He's personally present. When the combination of the two, the raga, the names of the Lord, is a heart-opening experience, and then there's an opportunity for one to finally let go. And in that, it's helpful. Sometimes we see devotees dance like this. Lord Chaitanya does it. Puts his hands in the air, and it's a description of, in the nectar of devotion, that if you clap your hands while you're having kirtan, then the birds of anxiety, past mistakes, and so forth, they fly away. And if you put your hands up when you sing, it sort of opens your heart even more, and you let go. So I've oftentimes, or I'd say constantly in this world, my hard work is to maintain the mask I'm wearing. Sociologically, everyone has a role to play. We learn how to play roles from the time we're born relative to our other siblings and our parents and the rest of society, what to speak of kindergarten. And then extremely trying times in 4th, 5th grade, figuring out what to wear, who's cool, who's not. That's stressful. And there's a way in which in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how when we come to spiritual consciousness, we're not burdened by these designations, or I was calling them masks. We see, although we have a role to play in society, and it's not that we become antisocial or asocial, but we realize that we're something more than the mask that we put before us, or for that matter, we're not even this material body, the designation of which often means that we have to make special arrangements to move about in the world. That doesn't stop either, but we're aware of it, that we're not our body. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that a person who's spiritually aware sees all living beings equally, because he or she sees beyond just the covering, the material body, and may see varieties of people, but is equally amenable to each one of them, knowing that there's a spiritual soul within inside. What to speak of the fact that God's within the heart of everybody. So for that matter, Srila Prabhupada describes the physical body to be a tabernacle. I just wondered what a tabernacle was. And then I was at the airport and I saw a prayer room and I went inside. They're in airports, you know that? Prayer room. And I went in and I found a tabernacle. It's a box where people come and worship. There's a spiritual essence inside the box, but nomadic tribes would take it with them and they would worship the Supreme there within the box. And you can see how the metaphor works so well, because if you look around anywhere in New York City or even in this room, you'll see that everybody's a tabernacle. Because yes, it's a body, it's a we're moving entities, but inside is us, spiritual soul, part of God, and then there's God himself. And in the Sri Upanishad it said, Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhujanataha tatrako mohakashoka ekat vammanupashitaha. That when one has that vision that every being is a spiritual spark, then such a person doesn't have a sense of lamentation or moha, no ignorance. They don't act ignorantly towards other people. They act in an enlightened way towards other people, and they also don't feel anxiety. And yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tatunada chakupsate. Such a person with that vision that each person is a spiritual soul within a particular body which came about by the combinations and permutations of material nature organized specifically because of the person's momentum from the last life, then there's a way that such a person is never disgusted with others. Have you ever felt disgusted with somebody? Or even, have you ever felt disgusted with yourself? Vijagupsade, there's a way in which the person doesn't feel disgusted, rather feels kinship towards others, sees beyond the designation of the body and the occupation, whatever situation the person might be in. And there's an opportunity hidden within the verse, anupashiti, which means that even if one doesn't have that type of vision, which is rare, to actually have that clarity of awareness all the time, says that, the verse says that you can follow the path of those who do have it and interact with the world or know the science behind it and see through the eyes of the teachings of others. And that way you're walking a path which is the path of enlightened engagement with the world. What do you think so far?
Haribol! Haribol!
Well, if you give me a book, I'll read from it too. Do you have a suggested book? What would you like me to read from or talk about? We'll sing a song while you're thinking about it. There's a Gita there. I'll take a Gita. If you can't get a Gita in a Hare Krishna temple, I don't know what the world's coming to. And then we'll just sing Jai Radha Madhava. Simple one. Before reading the Bhagavad Gita as is, I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all the great acharyas who have passed it down over millennia. And would you like to hear something from the Gita?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. At Bhagavad Gita 14:18, Krishna speaks the following to his student Arjuna. Urdhvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vrittista adho gachanti tamasa. The translation: those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Purport: in this verse, results of actions in the modes of nature are more explicitly set forth. There is an upper planetary system consisting of the heavenly planets where everyone is highly elevated. According to the degree of development of the mode of goodness, the living entity can be transferred to various planets in this system. The highest planet is Satyaloka or Brahmaloka, where the prime person of this universe, Lord Brahma, resides. We have seen already that we can hardly calculate the wondrous condition of life in Brahmaloka. But the highest condition of life, the mode of goodness, can bring us to this. The mode of passion is mixed. It is in the middle, between the modes of goodness and ignorance. A person is not always pure, but even if he should be purely in the mode of passion, he will simply remain on this earth as a king or a rich man. But because there are mixtures, one can also go down. People on this earth in the mode of passion or ignorance cannot forcibly approach the higher planets by machine. In the mode of passion, there is always a chance of becoming mad in the next life. The lowest quality, the mode of ignorance, is described here as abominable. The result of developing ignorance is very, very risky. It is the lowest quality in material nature. Beneath the human level, there are 8 million species of life, birds, beasts, reptiles, trees, etc. And according to the development of the mode of ignorance, people are brought down to these abominable conditions. The word tamasa is very significant here. Tamasa indicates those who stay continuously in the mode of ignorance without rising to a higher mode. Their future is very dark. There is an opportunity for men in the modes of ignorance and passion to be elevated to the mode of goodness. And that system is called Krishna consciousness. But one who does not take advantage of this opportunity will certainly continue in the lower modes. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, second chapter, Sūta Goswami begins speaking to the sages at Naimisharanya. And there he says, Partiva dharano dhumas tasmad agnis tari mayaha tamasastu rajas tasmad sattvam yad brahmadarshana. And that means that there are stages of life that we go through based on the three modalities of the world: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And here he gives a metaphor, does Sūta. He says that the mode of ignorance compares to wood. And that wood, when dried out, becomes a potential for a fire. Well, actually, there's earth, Parthiva. Starts with earth, then comes wood, then comes fire. So the mode of ignorance is compared to earth. It's a metaphor that is describing our involvement with material nature and the effect on our consciousness, which goes with another metaphor. I'll come back to the first one in a minute. And that is that there are entities in this world that are considered covered. There's covered consciousness. What do you suppose would be indicated by the terminology covered consciousness? What entities in this world? There's lots of them in New York City, especially outside the houses. Trees and plants? Do you want to vote on it? Trees and plants? You going to vote for that? We only got one vote. 2 votes, 3 votes, okay. You started something. Campaign. Yeah, trees and plants. They're conscious. They produce flowers, and they also have some volition. You notice they grow around things. They catch on and pull themselves up. Do creepers. They go all over the place. I'm always impressed by their resilience. They spring back, if you cut them back. And I notice with wisteria especially, they're tenacious. They send out runners that'll go to another yard, somebody else's yard, and start growing over there until you figure out. Some of them, some jasmine, they'll find a crack, go into somebody's garage, start climbing up. There's obviously a will to expand. They go for the light. They respond to light. They like light. They drink it. And so they're there. They're alive. And then, besides covered consciousness, there's a next stage of animals where they're not completely covered. You'll notice that they express emotions that we can relate to. They have love for their offspring. They lament or become disturbed when they're separated from their offspring. Prabhupada has given an example that when he lived in Vrindavan, and they have bars in the windows often, for good reason, especially for animals, monkeys and so forth, who are normally up to no good, especially the rhesus monkeys. They like to break things for no good reason. The langurs are not such rascals. They're very polite, actually. If you give them a banana, they'll thank you very much. But the rhesus, I saw a lady coming out of Radhakund one day, and she had a whole bag of bananas, and she thought that she would be a philanthropist and offer them one by one to the monkeys. And 2 really big monkeys came out and said, "Here." And they said, "No, the whole thing." Because they summarily started fighting over it. And so Prabhupada was at his window, and as he called it, a little baby monkey, he called it a kitty. The kitty got in through the bars and came inside, and the mother monkey was outside. And Prabhupada said she practically went crazy, had a separation from her kitty just for a few minutes. And Prabhupada was able to help move the little baby monkey back out, and then the mother was reunited with her little baby, and then she went away happy. But you notice that the consciousness is not covered per se, but it's just slightly covered. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing these gradations, and he comes to human life. Because there is, as described in the Vedas, there are 8,400,000 species of life. And human life is rare. Labvam sadurlabamidam bahusam bhavante manushamartadam anityam api hadira. It's very rare to get a human life out of all the species. There are more ants in New York City than humans. True or false? There are more ants under the Bhakti Center than all the people in New York City. True or false? You might know. So, when we come to the human form of life, the Srimad Bhagavatam says it's rare. Labham sudurlabham. Sudurlabham means it's rarely achieved. You can't put in for it. You win a kind of a lottery of the species and come into the human form of life. Labham sudurlabham idam bahusam bhavante. Out of many, many species and opportunities, coming into human life is rare, rare, rare. Manusha martanam anityam apihadira. It's temporary like all the other bodies, but it's extremely valuable because you can trade it in. You like trading things in? Do you like trading up? But you can do that. The human form of life means, although you have a temporary body, you can trade it up by developing your consciousness in this one lifetime. Even though it's temporary, it has a beginning and end. If you take to Krishna consciousness, as is Prabhupada has indicated here, you can upgrade to the highest level, even in one lifetime. And so human life is called budding consciousness, because the potential is fully there. And then when one has sadhana, sadhana means you have a deliberate practice in your life to improve yourself, to improve your consciousness. At least in the context I'm speaking, that's what it means. And in that case, it's called flowering consciousness. And when you attain the perfection of the Bhakti sadhana, then it's called full bloom. Full blooming consciousness. In Japan, around April time, they have cherry blossom season. People come from all over the world to see the blossoms. And when a tree is fully blooming, it's just reached its apex in bloom. And it's not a day after that, it's the very day when it's fully blooming. It's called Mankai, full bloom. People wait for that, to see a tree on that particular day that's fully bloomed. And when one has attained love for God in this life, then this is our fully blossomed, fully blooming consciousness of a living entity. So we start off partivad, dharano dumas. We start off in the mode of ignorance, somewhere mixed up with the coverings caused by the various modalities of this world. If you've ever experienced a loss of consciousness or a coming back to consciousness, have you ever had that? Like every day, when you come out of sleep? Or if you've ever been under anesthesia and you've come out? I was once distributing books in the Dallas airport, and I came out to have a little lunch in the car. Only problem was about 100 degrees. I had my lunch. I figured I'd have a nap. And when I woke up, it took me 5 minutes not only to figure out where I was, but who I was. And in those liminal states, we can observe that we are subjected to varying kinds of consciousness. In Partivad, you may see even in this lifetime a kind of wooden-like consciousness, sometimes called Jada Buddhi. If you've ever heard in the prayers that we sing for prasadam, have you ever heard? Of course you have. It's the best loved song in ISKCON. And I won't sing it now because I might lose everybody in the class or have more people come up from below. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's a song written by Bhakti Thakur about the glories of taking prasadam, which means spiritual food offered to Krishna. And he has multiple prayers, not just one. And one of them he says, Jada Buddhi Parihari Prasada Bojana Kodi. And then if you have Jada Buddhi, he says, which means your mind is like a stone. Stone-like conscious. That's the mode of ignorance. Partivad dharano dumas. You're like wood or stone. Or like earth. Stone is earth. Earth, stone. Then you can awaken by taking a little prasadam. It's the antidote. Partivad dharano dumas tasman agnistrayimiha. So there's a way in which then from earth comes wood. Wood can dry out and then it can become fire. Transformation into fire. And then fire becomes useful in the context of the Vedas, which is what is being discussed by Sūta Goswami at Naimisharanya. It says, there you can perform Vedic rites, Vedic sacrifices with that fire, and elevate your consciousness further beyond the three modes of material nature. And what's more, Sattvam Yad Brahmadarshanam, when you come to this fire-like consciousness, then you're granted a unique view of the world. Would you like a unique view of the world? Yes. Yeah. So that says Sattvam Yad Brahma Darshanam. Darshana means you can see something that you haven't seen before from goodness. And then what is that? Brahman. You can see spirit. And you can see the difference between matter and spirit. And this is the objective of human life, according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, when he describes to Arjuna what is real knowledge, Kshetra Jnam Chapimam Vidhi Sarva Kshetrishu Bharata. Kshetra Kshetrajnoyo Jnanam Yatach Jnanam Matam Mamam. Said, I'll tell you my opinion on what is real knowledge. And that is that you're able to see the difference between yourself and your body. And one can come to that level of consciousness by cultivation. The cultivation of consciousness is described by many sages, and in our line by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who taught the process of Krishna consciousness. And there are various ways in which we can organize our lives so that we elevate our consciousness. Now, the first and most important is to first take an inventory of our, we call the soundscape, or the soundtrack of your life. Do any of you have a soundtrack in your life? Have any of you ever been to a movie?
Yes.
Just a few people. Movies have soundtracks. That's what defines the era of the movie, isn't it? Yeah, you can look at a movie, you can also understand from the very beginning and after the opening credits, when the movie comes on, you can tell if it's a comedy. If it's kind of whimsical music and it's like, oh, this is going to be funny. If it's very, dark, is uh-oh, somebody's getting killed here. Mystery, or, this is all defined by the soundtrack. And so there's a way in which we also have a soundtrack in our life. And Sūta Goswami addresses this. He's talking about elevation of consciousness, and then he describes a series of practices, or one practice that evolves our consciousness. One practice. That sounds simpler, doesn't it? Say yes.
Yes.
So it begins with meeting somebody who has a better soundtrack than we have. So he says, and I'll quote what Sūta Goswami spoke to the sages, Shrushru Shro Shodadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Seveya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. That means if you can meet somebody who's spiritually awake and their taste in hearing is transcendental sound vibration. They like it. They're absorbed in it. What's more, they've been around others who like it, and they've evolved their consciousness. So he says, if you can get around such people, high-minded souls, and do some seva. Seva means try to assist them in their life, in whatever they're doing. If you do that, then it rubs off on you. It's a technique that Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita also, about getting knowledge from a wise person. He says, Tad vidi pranipatena prashnena sevaya uparakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. When you want knowledge, approach a person who already has it, but do it in a mood of submission. Don't go there saying, yeah, I heard that before. Yeah, I know that. It'll close the person down. Just be really open. Don't say, I already know that. Ever. Then, also, render some service. Back when I was a kid, it was cliche that you'd bring the teacher an apple. I don't know if they have that here in New York. But you're supposed to bring your teacher an apple. Did you know that?
Yes.
Bring an apple. Then you do some service, help teacher clean up the room or whatever. And then ask questions, and you can learn everything. So Shushrusha Sharadhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. When you do that, then you start getting a taste for hearing a transcendental sound vibration. You get it from other people. It's like you catch it. It's infectious. Bad things we know about, or the anomalous factors of the world, kind of virus-like things that get in us that cause a reaction. Is this ringing any bells? And it spreads. I'll leave it at that. Then that happens also when you get around people who already have that soundtrack in their lives. It's infectious. So he first says, Sūta Goswami says, get around them, try to serve them, be open-minded, listen, and then you'll develop a taste yourself, and then you'll start with a mini practice, something that you can accommodate. You can start wherever you are. So then he says, he gives this key verse. It's about how we get help. And this is one of the exciting features of spiritual life. We're not alone in the world. We're actually accompanied all the time by Krishna, who's within our heart. And he's waiting for us to remember him and to approach him, because he wants us to make the first move. So Sutta then says, Shrinvatam swa kata Krishna, punya shravana kirtana, hridyan taksto hibadrani, vitunoti suritsatam. So in this verse it says, when you start your practice, you hear about Krishna from those persons who are already talking about Krishna. You can read the dialogues of people who are talking about Krishna. Can you think of any dialogue like that? Bhagavad Gita? It's a dialogue, right? Who's involved in the dialogue? Krishna, Arjuna, Sanjay, Dhritarashtra. There's all these conversations going on. What happened now? And then there's a description. And what about Srimad Bhagavatam? Any dialogues there? Nothing but dialogues, one after another. Stories within stories, nested stories, all the way through of conversations that are going on. So he says, Shrinvatam swa kata Krishna. If you listen to that, kata means conversations. If you listen to those conversations by reading them, reconstituting them by reading them from the book, or listening to those who are discussing them, then Krishna within the heart begins to help you clean house. And by house we mean the consciousness. And he's there as our well-wishing friend, known as Vitunoti. Please say the word. Vitunoti. Now this has an interesting context. It's also a fantastic metaphor. And if you want to look it up later, feel free, or even now if you want to, but not everybody at once. But a vidunoti is an instrument for cleaning cotton. And it has cords that you pull taut. And then you put the cotton on top and you vibrate them. And then the impurities in the cotton fall through. It's usually in a little cabin-like unit where they're installed, and then the cotton becomes fluffy and clean. So the idea is that by the vibration of spiritual sound, topics about Krishna, then the impurities that are there within our consciousness are winnowed out, literally. And we're left with pure consciousness. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. What's more, we're filling our bank account with spiritual credits. Punya shravana kirtana. Just by listening, you become spiritually wealthy. Would you like to be spiritually wealthy?
Yes.
Just say yes.
Yes.
And then punya shravana kirtana, hridyan taksto hivadrani, because abhadrani, anything that's troubling you, it will be diminished because of the hearing and chanting. And then vidunoti suritsatam. Why is it? Because Krishna's in your heart and he'll help you to do it. And now I'll take a few reflections or questions to expand the conversation in the direction you'd like it to go, but not too far off track.
How do you help someone who's spiritually poor?
Hey, John. How are you? Good to see you. How to help somebody who's spiritually poor. Well, I think of when Prabhupada came to America, he had that awareness that people may be wanting some spiritual wealth. And it's interesting that he signed his letters and the notes that he wrote when he was coming to give spiritual wealth. With the sign-off was, you're insignificant, insignificant beggar. He called himself an insignificant beggar. And it's interesting that on one side, metaphorically, beggar is supposedly very poor. And by all normal accounts, Prabhupada would have been considered poor because although he had a business, he lost it. And then when he came to America, he didn't have any capital. But he did have an awareness of how to make people who were spiritually poor rich. And he employed a formula here in New York City where he publicly chanted Hare Krishna. And he also invited people to listen to Bhagavad Gita. And those who had previously been spiritually poor, just by listening, punya shravana kirtana means that if you just listen, then you'll notice for yourself that you're getting spiritual strength. This is what you can compare to spiritual wealth. When you notice that you have you have the ability, for instance, to control your senses the way you plan to do it. Most people can't do that. In fact, it's legend that people are on diets, and then one day they find themselves in a corner of their house with an empty half-gallon of ice cream and a spoon in their hand, and wonder how they got there. Or many other such escapades in our relationship with our senses that tend to demand things that are not good for us. People are addicted to so many things, and we may notice that by hearing from those who have the wherewithal, due to having association previously, they have that strength of heart, sense of integrity, that they can follow their plan. They can give it to others by association. It's one of the most prevalent of recommendations given by Lord Chaitanya and also by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, he says in Gita, a verse I personally think of frequently, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jangunan karanam guna sangosya sarasadyoni janmasu. And it means that everyone's where they are now because of their association, because of their previous associations, and we can almost predict where they're going to be in the future due to their present association. Therefore, if one wants to give spiritual wealth, first of all, it's helpful if you have some. And whatever you have, amazingly, in the science, did you know there was a science of spiritual mathematics? That the more you give, the more it grows. Normally, of course, I studied economics a little bit, and the first directive was that it's the management of scarce resources. I thought, oh, this is a bummer. I'm tired of scarce resources. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described how Lord Chaitanya and his associates distributed Krishna consciousness to everybody indiscriminately. In fact, there's poetically described there that there was a storehouse of love of God, but it was locked up. So they went and broke it open. I like that part. And they gave away its contents to everybody, not considering who was fit or who was unfit. And the more they gave it out, the more the contents increased. Now that kind of economics I can relate to. So in sharing Krishna consciousness with others, whatever little we have, our investment grows. Compounded interest. But spiritually, if we have a little something, some enthusiasm to share with others, and we share it, then somehow it grows in us as well at the same time. They get it, and we get a disproportionate increase in our portfolio. Would you like to plump up your portfolio? Say yes.
Yes.
So arrange ways to share whatever good fortune you have, share it with other people, because then it grows for you. John? Okay? Yes.
Within devotee society, how do we find out who to associate with? Because sometimes different devotees may not inspire us equally. And how do we know that if other people are saying that this association is good, but it doesn't elevate us, then how do we know if it's our problem, or is it our problem, or is it some, like, in general, how do we find out how to select devotee association within devotee society?
We have to follow your heart, and devotional service, Prabhupada said, is according to one's taste. Not everyone has the same taste. Even though it may be true that somebody's highly elevated, they may not be your cup of tea. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Or your cup of herbal tea. And so feel free to move about the universe and find your niche. Everyone has to have a niche where they feel comfortable and you have kindred spirits around you. Meanwhile, we offer respects to all Vaishnava devotees, Lord, in fact, to all living beings. In fact, in the section of the Srimad Bhagavatam in which Krishna talks about Bhakti, does that mean it's over? In Nirkula said it is. It's 12:30, so it's finished, right? I'll just finish this point. All the other teachings that Lord Krishna has to Uddhava are voluminous on Sankhya Yoga, on Karma Yoga, on the three modes of material nature, mystic powers, everything. But when you come to Bhakti, you'd be surprised. It's a tiny little section. And when you look through the section, you find that Krishna says, a Vaishnava is one who has deep humility within his or her heart and sees Krishna everywhere. Vaishnava offers respect even to a dog. Like, we read that in Govardhan Hill, a group of us, maybe Shami Pras was there, and we were going every day around Govardhan Hill, so we read that the night before, and we went early in the morning for our Govardhan Parikrama. We got up to Uddhavakund, and there was a dog, and he was on his back. He was kind of going like this. And we all thought the same thing at the same time, about 7 of us. And we got down and offered our obeisances to the dog. The dog was looking up and he goes, huh? So then he flipped over to look at us like, no one's ever done that. And we were remembering just the simplicity of Krishna consciousness, that offering respects to all. But just as we should be discriminate in who and how we deal with different kinds of people in the world, as is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Ishvare Taradineshu, Bali Sheshu Tu Satsucha, Prema Maitri Kapo Peksha, Yakaroti Samadhimaha. Similarly, our acharyas say we should find a place where we have association of devotees who are like-minded and hopefully more advanced than ourselves. If you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I thank you very much. This is like a puddle jumper class, a little short trip where you put the luggage, you hand it off before you get on the plane. It's a very short flight. I wish we could have more time, but thank you very, very much for coming, and I hope that the soundtrack of your life, you can, and I'll just make a statement. Please invest in the soundtrack of your life, because every iota that you spiritualize it is the degree to which you will advance spiritually, have spiritual wealth, and then have plenty to share. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Radha Murlidhar, Shri Giriraj Maharaj, Shri Nishingadev, if you so desire, please empower us to upgrade the soundtrack of our lives and then make the soundtrack of New York City transcendental. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpavrushya kripasindhabheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Nanta Koti Vaishnaviniki Jai Gopre Mananda.